I think you're going to see an increase, basically, as Richard is saying, from now on and moving forward. But I think that the heavy industry, which we are focusing on, and in particular in the marine segment, you can see that the big ships will definitely start to retrofit, putting 1 to 3, 4, 5 megawatt on board to be able to operate as zero emission in port, which is the most important task they can do. Looking into the fact that basically 90% of the population lives close to the sea, and again 90% out of 90 lives in cities, which is portside. And I think we're going to have an extremely focus on decarbonization in the ports moving forward. So, of course, from our point of view, it's all about marine.
Right. And Richard, what's your view on this, 2026?
2026. Well, first, I thought, Tore, we have agreed to not use the word big bang or explosion in this industry. It's kind of like a no-go area. But no, let's put numbers on things. When we look at our portfolio going forward, and then the volumes that we predict that we will sell in 2025, the life cycle saving of CO2 for those volumes already in 2025 equals 3% of the whole CO2 emissions of Sweden. This is how fast it is going, and this is the value that we and Teco and others will capture, because a number of companies are, as I said, very late in that transition towards 2030. So that is kind of the driver, and that driver is present in aviation, it's present in marine, it's present in power generation. We see a massive demand from power generation where they want to replace the diesel generators for backup power. So I think that there will be a number of segments that will surprise us going forward, but they are related to availability of hydrogen. They are related to supporting infrastructure, etc. Not as much subsidizing as you would expect me to say. I know you'll come back to that because I'm not a big fan of the subsidy too much, because it creates kind of a konstgjord andning in Swedish, where you need to have commercial customers.
You said you see a massive interest from stationary power, but to be frank, you haven't announced that many orders in that area compared to others.
Yep.
So,
but this is a technology shift. I mean, when I started at PowerCell, we had a strategic partnership. We have a strategic partnership with Hitachi that was supposed to be the foundation of the growth. But certain segments and run into issues with this transition. It could be infrastructure, it could be legislation, etc. So that segment has been a negative surprise. But on the other hand, aviation was just, mind-blowing for us. So you need to be very agile in your ability to capture where the growth is coming. So this is where we have a slightly different strategy than just focusing on one or two segments.
If we talk about this in conjunction with the targets of 2030, like you said, Tore, many companies have, and you also mentioned that, Richard, is that sort of in line with where the research projects are currently? Because, the normal timeline going from research to commercialization and so on, for them to be there in 2030, is 2026 really early enough, or are the research projects where they need to be today?
I think that the research projects will generate substantial value from 2032 and onwards. What we have today available will be what is saving us from now until 2030. So this is why I said that this is where the subsidies in Europe and US differ, and where I think that the US are getting it right. Because in the US, they are subsidizing the market. They're giving money to the customer, and then it's up to companies like PowerCell to have an attractive offering enough to get a share of that. In Europe, we spend too much money on technology. That will both delay the introduction, but it will also provide somewhat of inferior technology, because we don't really know what will be value creating today. So I'm not a big fan of the European way of doing things, because I think it will be subsidizing also things that shouldn't be reaching the market. So I'm more in favor of stimulate the market, create the market demand, because then you get the solution. What we see is now delaying, especially the electrolyzer industry, is the fact that the infrastructure and the complete value chain is not in harmony. A certain part of the value chain is accelerating faster than others, which create bottlenecks. If you give money to the end customer or the market, that will sort itself out much, much easier. So yeah, it's a difference. You need to have more precision in the money.
What's your view, Tore, on the government incentives in different regions?
No, I think that everything is good in a way. However, I agree with Richard that think about what we are doing now. We are entering into a transition. Last time was basically 75 years ago. And today we are creating the pathway. And everybody would love to, of course, look into the crystal ball. But as Richard just said, 1.5 years ago, there was not even thinking about aviation. I think that there is so many things pending behind closed doors today, which suddenly is showing up. And we have to be there. Another thing which is very, very important is that we get up to speed. Economy of scale is everything. Today, the major part of all potential clients is, of course, looking into the cost. And we have to create volumes so we get the economy of scale, and we can also compete with existing technology, because that is important from the end user. Because not every end user is thinking green, green, green. That's for sure. Definitely not in the marine industry where we are. So it's all about creating a new pathway. I am not going to say exactly where this is going to end, except that plenty of white sheets is telling us that fuel cell will definitely play an important role in the next 50 years.
Yeah. Okay. Well, are there any other substantial hurdles or pain points that are not really being addressed today in the industry that you're kind of waiting for solutions for?
Tore, you can go first.
I mean, well, the reason why customers say, yeah, we're very interested, but let's wait and see, is that like
I think
supply of hydrogen mainly, or?
we as you know, we cannot talk about, we cannot go too deep into everything we are doing. But for example, we are very close to sign a deal with somebody who is signing, but they would like to have an opening in the contract where they are triggering the production start due to hydrogen availability. So for us, having Amogy, E1 Marine, Perusa Green Technology, all these other guys, which is also coming with either reformer or cracking of either methanol or ammonia, it's helping the shipping industry at least, because the shipping industry, they don't know yet where will they get hydrogen and when and what volume.
Right. Yeah, and I can agree with that one. But still, I think that for the last 2 years, I mean, availability of hydrogen is a bottleneck, and it will continue to be a bottleneck. But the bottleneck is getting wider because of investments into green hydrogen production from the volatile energy sources, but also then from reformed ammonia and reformed methanol, which gives us much, much more availability. But also one more thing, and that is that the whole value chain is acknowledging the fact that even if you run on blue or turquoise or even gray hydrogen, it is preparing this energy transition. So the customers are accepting not the perfect solution, which is green hydrogen, but a good enough solution, which is building application knowledge, it's scaling the value chain. And even grey hydrogen has a better CO2 footprint than burning diesel and crude oil. So we are seeing an improvement. And I've seen this before, that everybody's waiting for the perfect solution. But we need to start with a good enough solution when it comes to availability of hydrogen, at least, because that will build a momentum.
If we will hear later on companies presenting today that have chosen sort of a different strategy in terms to the whole value chain approach. Yep. You haven't, of course, it was before your time and all, but the strategy from PowerCell, not sort of doing the whole shebang and making sure that there are no limitations to why the customer can say no, because you can still supply it.
Well, the question is.
The question would be sort of the strategy choice between doing let's also produce hydrogen, distribute it, and all, and also do stacks and everything apart from what you both guys are doing, and choosing let's be expert on this.
Yeah, I mean you're perfectly describing Plug Power, which company I love because they're kind of the cowboys of the industry. They're really moving the industry forward, but the amount of risk that they are taking on and the balance sheet that they need to have is slightly different than the risk appetite of myself and my board. But of course, I mean, you could argue that PowerCell have a fairly diverse strategy as it is. We're addressing a number of different segments with a number of different projects. So it's all about finding your comfort zone. Where do you create value? And I think that there are companies that would be better off providing hydrogen to the market than PowerCell, especially coming from energy supply and energy tradition. So it's better to team up with them and have them close to you and work with them than to perhaps take on all the responsibility.
Tore, I'm guessing your reasoning is sort of the same.
I fully agree with Richard that you cannot look into the most optimal solution tomorrow. We have to admit that every little step in the right direction is making the world better. And aiming for the green hydrogen, that will take a long time. So we have to take the solution which is out there today and use it the best we can. And it's definitely everything is better than what has been doing in the past.
Well, maybe you can talk a little bit about the future in terms of new generations and the ability or the possibility for significant cost reductions. I know that Ballard is now saying that they target 70% cost reduction by 25 in their production. And although there are not that many stack suppliers or system suppliers today, there are a number of huge companies in the world that are working on this technology, which is of course good because it shows that they believe in it. But Hyundai and Daimler, Volvo, Cummins, etc., are coming on stream. So. This type of cost reductions, are they realistic? Are they necessary? And what should we expect when these huge companies enter the scene in maybe a few years, 4 or 5 years?
Well, I will not comment on their prediction with 70% because it's their number, and it also depends on where you start from. We have been working quite hard on creating internal efficiency for many years, and stack is one thing. The complete system is a different thing. For PowerCell, the collaboration we have with Bosch is of course critical here because we get the scale of economy from the volumes also from automotive and heavy duty trucks. So we become a big player together with them. So we have a fairly good position with that. But then it's also about creating the business case with the customer, because already today we can see that, especially in marine, total cost of ownership of the life cycle is not necessarily that much more expensive when you take into account fuel cost, service cost, etc. So for a 15-year life cycle in a marine application, but I would say 8-year life cycle in a heavy-duty truck, it's not more expensive than the current technology. The issue is that the CapEx investment is high. And money today is always more valuable than money tomorrow. And this is where we have, it's more of a business development issue that we have. But working to improve the cost is, of course, lowering that threshold, making it more available and accessible to more customers. But it's also about education and having a clear path on cost of hydrogen, understanding what the penalties for CO2 emissions will be going forward, etc. So that in combination will kind of create an even more favorable total cost of ownership analysis going forward. But cost reductions are critical, and we need to share the scale of economy and volume effects together with the customer. But this is where I said that we have a fairly good plan for PowerCell, and of course, having the volumes with Bosch it's a quite solid foundation to work from.
Yeah. Tore, any comments there?
I think that what Ballard is saying, if they can do that, that means that they are definitely looking into an enormous volume increase, and that helps the industry. That helps us. That helps PowerCell. That helps everybody. If Ballard can open the door and be sure that they can reduce the cost with 70%, that's fantastic. On the other side, what Richard is saying, total cost of ownership. Today it's okay over 15 years in the shipping industry. So I mean, we are getting closer. But I think this must be a very positive news from Ballard that they are going to decrease the cost by 70%. That must be an enormous volume coming up, which is going to benefit all of us. So let's congratulate Ballard with that.
We touched upon it a bit about sort of huge companies, energy companies coming into this market sort of fairly late, as they usually do. They let the niche player do the research development first, and then they come in bang with their big budgets. How do you see this pan out, sort of going forward? Tor, if you were to start, will they do the mass market approach, and there will be niches such as what you've both targeted that will be profitable, or what do you think will happen as the market mature?
No, I think that, first of all, I think it's very important that we are really looking into what is happening in the world today, in all the industry segment in terms of getting up to volume. That's number one. I think that what Bosch did with PowerCell back in the days by doing this license agreement is fantastic. I think you're going to see things like that will also happen in the future. There will be stack suppliers in the world which could produce stacks for many segments, many end user. The stack is, of course, the most valuable thing in the fuel cell system. Balance of plant you can arrange, but the stack is the heart of everything. So let's see where the big guys is moving when they are realizing that there is no reason to invent the wheel again, and knocking on maybe various doors where you have good stacks.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that the current generation of technology is not yet a mass market to the extent where the big guys will have a benefit of their size. That will happen from 2030, 2035 going forward. And this is why we have the two new generations ready for industrialization, because with those two, first and foremost, we have no limitations with Bosch. We're at liberty to go with anyone. And perhaps looking at different business models where you can become and not just have perhaps one Bosch deal going forward, but many, because there will be different segments where you don't want to approach it by yourself because the risk is too high or the characteristic of the sale is different. But then there will always be niche markets. And when we see niche, it's still a mass market. I think that the volumes of between 50 to 150,000 will be out of reach for the bigger ones because they want to go for even higher volume. So there is significant room for new entrants, and the ones having a long history of technology and knowledge in this area will be strong also going forward. So I think that both Teco and PowerCell and others have a really interesting position in this emerging market.
Great. I think we'll have to conclude it there. And thank you very much, Tor. Thank you, Rickard.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. And thank you for joining us today.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks.
And we'll be right back after a short break.